In my previous video, I went over a group that appears to be like a cult. However, they were not really a cult. This time, the group I looked into is really complicated. Labeling them as a cult seems right, but also wrong at the same time. However, what is a cult? A relatively small group of people having beliefs or practices, especially relating to religion, that are regarded by others as strange or sinister or as imposing excessive control over members. There are other definitions, but this is the one we will use. These days, people throw around the word cult to groups they do not like or understand. We will have a checklist though that will cover what to look for in a potential cult. Extreme devotion to a leader or belief, absolute authority over members, control over members' lives, isolation from the outside world, exploitation of members, and manipulation of members. These 6 will be in the main checklist, but if there are other notable things, we will note them down. The group I'll be covering today is from the game Final Fantasy XIV. I have no members from this group. I actually interviewed a couple of their ex-members. However, I will redact their names due to their request. The group is Dreadworm Academy. There are a few videos on them, however, I feel like most are just making fun of them. I will not be doing that here. While I do not agree with how they ran things, I do not think making fun of people is the right call. But are they a cult? Yeah, kind of. I mean, just look at this screenshot. However, let us begin. So, what is Dreadworm Academy? Well, it is a free company, which is like a guild. The academy leader was Nephis. They created the free company to help new adventurers, returnees, and refuge for the anxious or bitter players. There are other important leaders, but we shall get to them later. In short, Dreadworm Academy was a school. Yeah, if that confuses you, I do not blame you. Their goal was to teach newer players how to be better at the game. Shown here is Neph even teaching a class. Now you might ask, is this some sort of role-playing thing? Well, this is difficult to answer. Yes and no though. Role-playing did happen, and we will get into that later. However, the teaching aspect is not role-playing. The academy is split up between teachers and students. However, I do have to stop here and shine a light on a feature in Final Fantasy XIV. You see, there is this feature called the Novice Network. In theory, it is supposed to have mentors who help newer or returning players. In reality, it is mostly a giant chat room for most servers. You can find help on there, however, Dreadworm Academy did not support this feature. You would get in trouble if you were in the Novice Network without permission. Matter of fact, all outside knowledge is banned. Everything must be approved by one of the leaders. Now, when Dreadworm Academy came into the limelight, a user actually interviewed Neph. I'll be showing it on screen, but a good chunk of it is low quality. Well, in it, the person asked Neph, why couldn't members use outside info or the Novice Network? Which Neph said this. As for outside help, that's FC policy. Our house, our rules. There's the door if you don't like it. Not even allowing members to use the market board. Everything must be made from within the free company, so if you needed an item made, you would have to ask them. This makes members rely on them solely. Now, to be fair, they did seem to provide for members fairly well. However, members were also prohibited to sell items on the market board. How they went about enforcing this, I have no clue. However, you might ask, are they actually good at the game? Well, they are decent, but their knowledge is very lacking. At one point in that interview, Stone Sky Sea was brought up, and Neph had no clue what it was. For being teachers, they seem to be missing some info. They have admitted that they are not an expert at the game, but why restrict your members then? As you can see, they wanted control of their members. While they do say you can leave whenever you want, which I do believe, but I had questions about this. Let's go over their website a bit. We have to use the Wayback Machine to view it. In it, they have their 3 pillars, which is the base of their teaching. Now, they believe people who do not follow this are reckless and foolish, but let's see about that. Most of the tank's code can be viewed as, well, as they say, common sense. Though a healer could be the one to mess up, but the way this is written, a healer is never at fault. The healer's creed. Again, this is mostly just common sense. As you can tell by now, the writing can be a little, well, matter-of-fact sounding. Moving on to the DPS, or Rules of Engagement. This is the first case of them being wrong on something. At the bottom, they say, do not waste limit break on trash, which can be a silly thing to say. Oftentimes using a limit break on trash will do more damage in total than just using it on a boss, making the dungeon go by faster. The rest is fine. Again, a little harsh, but fine. They have some closing remarks, which will be the first of many on Savage Raiders. At the end, even going so far to say this is how Final Fantasy XIV is meant to be played. Very matter-of-fact like. So how did one join? Well, on screen is how. The first point is obvious, but the rest get weird. Strict on it being a school and not a social club. Being experienced in any way makes you a suspicious person. Discord being mandatory is sort of okay. However, being forced to join their website, giving out your email to people you do not know is a little odd. Then their hatred of parsers, which I can sort of understand. They take it to some extremes. Also, you're not permitted to have an alt that is in another free company, yet one of many examples of them being controlling. External activities are okay as long as they do not interfere with Dreadworm activities. However, if you bought a starter kit which gives you a level boost for a job, you could have been denied. Of course, though, there was an interview process on top of all of this. Most of their rules are normal, but not being able to share knowledge of the game without permission is kind of extreme. Not being able to send private messages to staff is a little weird. However, it clearly shows they wanted newer players. Why though is a good question. One theory is that newer players were just easier to control. So let's look at their about page. They say conquering difficult challenges, but they also discourage players from even doing Savage content. So what challenging content besides extremes? Now I do find the free of judgment comment kind of funny here. If you think they repeat themselves a lot, well, it's a common trait of Nef. They also explain their teaching methods, which are, well, kind of insane. At the end, they say teachers will accept corrections. However, they have mentioned that you should not correct them at all. Matter of fact, even helping someone else is frowned upon. Shown here is an image with the caption of counseling healers, which is Further on, they explain more of what they have already, even going so far to say they do not handhold. Yeah, okay. I will say, any group that says they are anti-drama so much is, well, full of drama. Now shown here is an interesting photo. They mention that Dreadworm is not really a role-playing thing. However, unless they just set everyone up for this picture, it would be role-playing here. Finally, they say they are not that serious. Yeah, okay. Now, let's see more of the school aspect. Well, here are their courses, and well, some are what you would expect, but some not so much. Like housing? What do they even do to teach housing? Like, this is how you can move a chair around. Glamoring is an amusing one too, since Nef is accused of making people wear cult robes. They then go over how they teach, which highlights the 3 pillars once more, showing their core concepts, which are mostly alright. Respect the story is an interesting thing to say. The real life comes first always seems, I don't know, like it's there to cover their tracks. And of course, playing the game as intended. Once more, highlighting their hatred for parses. Onto what they do not teach, which is, well, stuff they have said countless times already. Also, highlighting that they do not stop people from spending money, but it is inappropriate? Like implying you could be punished can be seen as an attempt to stop them from doing so. Then they show how Dreadworm will support you. Honestly, if you are new, this might look like a nice deal. Getting free gear below level 50 seems great, however, the game gives you plenty of gear. So really, this was just a ploy to get unsuspecting people in. Now obviously they want to control, that much is obvious. However, also making the member rely on them and only them is, well, Another huge red flag. Shown here is what assets they have. Some of these are fine, but again, the zero dependence on outside help and zero market dependence is just them being controlling. Now, we are almost done with the website, but let's cover the staff page. I want to highlight only 2 of the staff. There were others, however, I am not entirely sure how willing they were in Dreadworm. You see, I actually interviewed 2 confirmed members from Dreadworm, one of which was, well, untrustworthy to say the least. The other one was fairly trustworthy. I bring this up now because I will not cover everyone on this site. From what I gathered, most of them want to move on from all this, and I want to respect that. Let us cover Neff first. She is, well, interesting. Now, I will be mingling the site pages and other stuff about them together. Neff is, well, narcissistic to say the least. It bothers me. Her quote is not actually a quote. Now, shown here is her RP sisters. This is, well, okay, where do I even begin? So, first up, she dresses them in their special robes. Totally not a cult. Also, there might be, well, some sexual undertones with this. It is not confirmed, but there were rumors of it. However, she has also been known to be racist with Final Fantasy XIV races, which is weird. She has shown a huge affection for the race Aura. So much so, it does seem a little odd. However, I found no real racism with her on my own. So, it's hearsay. Now, I guess these sisters have some role-playing bio, which is fine, I guess, nothing too odd. However, every single bio, Neff is mentioned at least once. Like, this poor girl's roleplay bio doesn't even start with her, it just starts with Neff. It does seem like Neff wrote most of these themselves. Now, shown here is, well, their dating page on the forums. This is odd, but it does show their preference of the Aura race. Now, I will stop here for now about Neff and move on to another person. Next up is Archaic Blight. He is kind of the vice leader of Dreadworm. Now, he mentioned he is a master in-game content teacher, however, he really only has basic knowledge of the in-game. I do not think he is bad in any sense, however, to say he is a master is, well, a stretch. He is also kinda narcissistic. From everything I have heard about him, he very much has the mindset of, I am right no matter what. This was a common thing for members to say about him. Another thing that was said about him was him being racist. Now, I tried to find the source for this, however, it led to dead links. So I am taking this with a grain of salt. Overall, he is a pretty big aspect of Dreadworm. However, both people I talked to said he was a pretty nice guy. A lot of mixed signals with him. Now, there are other teachers, but I will not cover them too much. Why? Well, if you still play and seem like they would rather put all of this behind them, and I will respect that. Others completely quit the game. So you might have already guessed, but Dreadworm Academy does not exist anymore, or, well, mostly not. Neff and Ark seem to no longer play on these characters. If they are playing, I have no clue under what names they are going by. So you might ask, what even happened? Well, you see, I actually knew about them for a while since we were on the same server. For a long time, people assumed that they were just a role-playing free company. Many found them to be odd, and some ex-members left on bad terms. However, one member who left on bad terms made all this public. In short, this all came to light due to a disagreement about Savage content. Neff had a full meltdown, which someone took a capture of. In it, Neff shows a little bit more of their attitude behind closed doors. Now, there is, well, a lot here. Feel free to pause and read. However, it is mostly just rantings of someone clearly not well. In it, they say maybe they will do Savage someday, but have no plans. And if you attempt it yourself, then you will more than likely be on their shit list. After this incident, several people came forth to share stories of Dreadworm. Some even brought to light that they were not allowed to even have FC rooms unless inspected. In the end, they were mocked heavily. However, Neff actually viewed it as a positive, saying that it would bring in traffic and more members. Clearly, this would not happen. Dreadworm became quite a popular topic for a while. People started to run into members, and shockingly, Dreadworm members were being toxic. Neff continued to be a narcissist as well. arguing with people on Discord with stuff they are clearly ignorant about. In the end, things got worse. At their mansion were people swarming it at all times. Members being messaged by random people even. For lack of a better term, Dreadworm was being harassed. I do not agree with Dreadworm's actions. However, I also do not agree with harassing people. Well, then someone was actually able to talk to Neff. Those low-res screenshots all came from this encounter. The person was mostly just curious and honestly was respectful. Overall, Neff never became self-aware. They said they want to focus on their current members and are closed off for the time being. In it, Neff gets quite hostile even though the person asking questions is being cordial. Neff goes so far to say that there were criminal charges and harassers were being banned from platforms. I highly doubt this claim was real. So, what happened after this? Well, the harassment of people outside the free company lasted for a while. They dropped the Academy Act and rebranded as Dreadworm Oasis for a time. Then, they fully disbanded. Or, well, maybe? The free company actually got turned into another free company. Now, there are totally different people in it and under new leadership. Could the leader be a new version of Neff? Possible, however, I deem it unlikely. I only found this info while investigating. Ark, as far as I'm aware, has quit along with Neff. However, I did talk with two former members. The trustworthy one wants to remain unnamed. The other one actually did not mind their name being shared, however, I am fairly sure they are not the person they claim to be. You see, this person said they were Soli Ao, one of Neff's sisters. Now, why did I doubt this person? Well, for one, their details about themselves were just mixed up. Second, their stories never stayed straight at all. And lastly, I found out Soli Ao still plays, and when I went to ask them, they never responded. So everything they told me, I will not share since I am fairly certain it's someone just wanting to harass them more. However, the other person did confirm they were actually a member of Dreadworm. They called Dreadworm not a cult, but could easily see how others would call it one. From what they say, things were much more casual than how they really look. They did not reveal any grand info or anything that has already not been shared. However, they did have one thing to say about Neff. They were fairly controlling, I admit, but we were friends, and a lot of people did not want to anger her to lose friends. A sad thing to hear, truly. So, let's go over our checklist. Extreme devotion to a leader or belief. Neff did demand that at times, so we'll say yes. Absolute authority over members. Clearly a yes. Control over members' lives. To a degree, yes. But it does seem like they were allowed to leave, so this is only a maybe. Isolation from the outside world. Oh yes, without a doubt, and they made that be known. Exploitation. This, I would say, no actually. I never did find any evidence of them actually exploiting anyone. Manipulation? I would say yes, solely due to them acting like they know so much, but really do not. Also, giving out small little things to make them look enticing for new recruits would fall under this. So, was Dreadworm a cult? Well, with only one no, I would say yes, they were. However, it is a bit more complicated. I do not think the goal was to make a cult. However, it did turn into one in a way. Was Neff ever aware of this? Unsure really. From the way I view it, they were an utter control freak who let it go way out of hand. In the end though, it was a cult, in a way. So, case closed. Now, are there any other potential cults in Final Fantasy XIV? Yes and no. There is another, but it's really convoluted and messy. Perhaps I will do a video on them if there is interest. While the cult this time was more fitting of the title cult, but it is still up for debate. My next cult video, however, is complicated, but for a myriad of reasons. However, this is the end of the video, so best wishes for everyone till next time and take care.